Millions of Americans are expected to go on a European vacation this summer, and many of those going for the first time are likely to be following the advice of travel writer Rick Steves. He's the host of Rick Steves Europe on PBS stations. I traveled to Washington State to sit down with him for our weekend spotlight.
You've got gargoyles.
We've got these, I think, are the only functioning gargoyles this side of the Mississippi.
These stone carvings would fit right in on Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris. But this is Rick Steves' multi-million-dollar travel company in Edmonds, Washington, a Seattle suburb.
You know, gargoyles do two things. They scare away the evil spirits, of course, and they also provide a storm drain for when it really rains hard. And on a good rainy day, the water comes on the Notre Dame in Paris.
Yeah.
At Rick Steves Europe.
Steves researches some of his guidebooks himself. He spends 3 months every year in Europe, filling notebooks with his observations. What to see, where to eat, where to stay.
So this would have been 2016, and I did Florence, Paris, Barcelona, Madrid, Venice, and so I would go, and my responsibility was to visit the places in the book with other people helping, and I would always have my Moleskine, and I would jot all my notes, and I can't begin to read that now, but I can read my writing for 24 hours, and then it expires, because I can read that shorthand.
Here in Edmonds, a staff of about 100 works on his best-selling guidebooks aimed at first-time travelers.
Up next, we're going to the Italian Riviera.
On his podcasts.
This is Travel with Rick Steves.
And on his long-running TV series on PBS stations nationwide.
Here in Iceland, we experience both the power of nature and the beauty of nature.
In Europe, about 240 guides lead dozens of bus tours each year. Steves said he discovered the transformative power of travel in 1978 when he was 23. That summer, he and a friend spent 6 weeks going from Turkey to Nepal, the storied Hippie Trail.
It was the epic road trip, Istanbul to Kathmandu. The Beatles were hanging out with the Maharishi in India, you know, and it was a perfect time in my life. I remember this is the last year people could do the Hippie Trail, 1978. The next year, the Shah fell, and Ayatollah Khomeini turned Iran into a theocracy. The next year, the Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan, and there's a war zone. You couldn't travel through that. So there's no more Hippie Trail.
But you didn't know that at the time.
I didn't know that at the time. In fact, I was clueless about everything political at the time. I was just a 23-year-old looking for adventure in the world. And it was my coming-of-age trip.
He kept a journal on that trip and put it away years ago. But he dug it out during the pandemic.
And I read it, and it was vivid. It was candid. It was raw. It was before I was a travel writer. And every day, every moment, I'd be capturing vivid details. To me, it was like somebody nets butterflies as they flutter by. You know, when you're traveling, when you're far from home and something really cool happens, you go, this is what just makes my trip sparkle, but it's gone. And there's another one. And what I wanted to do, I felt this need to write it down so I could save it.
It was published in February. On the Hippie Trail, Istanbul to Kathmandu and the Making of a Travel Writer made it to the New York Times bestseller list.
I have strong mission in my teaching. I have strong ideas of what carbonates your travel experience. How can an American best broaden their perspective through travel? And when I look at this journal, I can see the roots of that passion. It's a fascinating experience to have written a journal like that and discovered it 45 years later. This has been Main Street for me ever since I was in 7th grade. And I don't know, when you travel, it's easy to travel when you know where your home is.
His family moved to this quiet city on Puget Sound when he was 12. It's where he practices his own brand of philanthropy and activism.
We'll just go out there until the police tell us we can't do it anymore. But this
You're not allowed to sit here?
Well, we will be allowed to sit here when this is a traffic-free piazza in the center of our beautiful little town.
So we're engaging in a little civil disobedience
This is civil
here.
disobedience. So every once in a while, hello. Every once in a while I like to just sit here and imagine it was traffic-free. Yeah, I call it the piazza. You know, in America, we need the piazza. Why is Italy my favorite country? In one word, piazza. Communities coming together.
For Steves, that's the power of travel and his message to encourage it.
When you travel, you realize how much we have in common with people. People across this globe love their gelato.
He makes numerous public appearances like this one in Bellevue, Washington.
We have the American dream. Not everybody has our dream. I used to think that would be insulting to us, but it's not. Sri Lankans have the Sri Lankan dream. Canadians have the Canadian dream. And it is not joining us.
We also talk about the difference between a tourist and a traveler.
A tourist, to me, is, got a bucket list. You're checking off things. You're getting nice selfies. You're having some great time on the beach. You're hanging out with your own friends. You're changing the weather, but you're not changing your culture, you see. That's a legitimate kind of travel, but you've got a pretty low bar if that's why you're traveling. As a teacher, I want to embrace culture shock as a good and constructive thing, not something to avoid, but something that is a valuable product of thoughtful travel. It's the growing pains of a broadening perspective. I just love this notion, John, that you can learn a lot about your home by leaving it and looking at it from a distance.
There's a moment in the journal. We describe a serendipitous event in India, and you say that this is the moment that makes you choose travel. Could you read that?
Yes, this is really a moment. On the road out of town, we came upon 4 beautiful women carrying huge baskets of grass on their heads. I goofed around with them a bit, discovering that they had a sense of humor, and then I made my move. Crouching under the giant hat of hay, I looked a woman right in the eye. Sharing the shade of all that hay, so suddenly, so close together, from opposite worlds, yet sharing the same planet with our noses just inches apart, it was the kind of moment that makes me choose travel.
Choose travel.
Yeah, choose travel. Well, that's the kind of moment that travel should be. It's getting up and close.
Even then, his breezy writing and keen observations were evident. There were other dusty journals he hadn't looked at in years. We asked him to read a page from one of them.
This is my journal from the year before the hippie trail. July 27, Cairo. We spent 2 hours poking in and out of markets, stealing photographs, ignoring what time is it now, what is your name, and constant hellos. After a while, we tended to forget that we had everyone's attention, and even distant honks, screams, and hellos were directed at us. If being famous is like this, I'm glad I'm obscure. That's a good line. If being famous is, I'm glad I'm obscure. This is good. I've never looked at this either, honestly. Wow. So, maybe there's another book there.
In August 2024, Steve set out on an unexpected journey. He was diagnosed with prostate cancer. It's something he talks about openly.
My personality, I guess, is to try to look on the bright side of things. And I thought, I don't know the language. This is all new to me. I'm going to learn. I'm going to be okay. And if I'm not, I've had a good life, you know?
So
he was declared cancer-free in February, just as his book was published.
The ships that go out here, next stop, Tokyo. I just love that. It's a reminder of a big world.
From his home overlooking Puget Sound, Steve says he'll continue to preach his message that travel is more than just bucket lists and selfies.
You got to get out of your comfort zone. You got to create a situation where serendipity is constantly knocking on your door, and then you got to say, yes, come on in. That's where you get those travel experiences. That's the best souvenir. It stays with you for the rest of your life. It stays with you for the rest of your life.